What is up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York calling from the quarantine zone again, and this time we got Mark Kelly of Marillion and Mark Kelly's Marathon. Thank you so much for your time today, man. It's great to have you here.
Hi, Alex. Good to speak to you too.
Yep, it's so awesome to have you here. I was just listening to the Mark Kelly's Marathon. This is really, really breathtaking and really beautiful to listen to. The first thing I wanted to ask you is, do you feel like that the first single that you released, Amelia, could almost serve as like a clear representation of what the entirety of this album will sound like? Or is that just like one taste of it?
I thought long and hard about which song to put out first, because obviously that's going to be first impressions and all that, and it seemed like the best choice to balance between, because it's still quite a long song, and I realised that, releasing a 10-minute track isn't ideal for a lot of people, but I think it does represent the album. There are other facets to the album, but I think if I had to choose one track, that would probably be it.
Yeah. Was there maybe like a preconceived idea of what you wanted this whole album to sound like, or was there like a lot of improvising and a lot of experimentation?
I had a pretty fixed idea in my head of where I wanted to go with it right from the start. I think I was looking to do something. It's my first ever solo album. I've been in Marillion for nearly 40 years, and I've never done an album. And I was I was being a bit nostalgic, I suppose, because I wanted to make an album that was going to be, 45 minutes long, that would fit on a vinyl disc and would have a gatefold sleeve, just like the sort of thing that when I was 15 years old and really into music was the sort of thing that I really enjoyed, was looking at the sleeve of an album and having something with more episodic, songs that tell stories rather than just short 3-minute pop songs, So that was the approach really that I wanted to take. I wanted it to be an immersive experience,
Yeah, definitely. And, that's exactly the vibe I got from it. I feel like that this isn't just, an album that you listen to, but it is kind of like an experience that you just, like, the only way you're going to have that experience is if you put in the album, relax, start off with Amelia, and end with 2051 Brief History. Like, I feel like it really is representing a reality.
Great. Well, that was the intention when I first thought of what I would like to do. So hopefully I've got some way to achieving that, which is great.
Yeah, definitely. And now, working with other members as well outside of Marillion, did that maybe open up like new ideas on how to, approach songwriting and approach playing altogether? Did maybe more doors open up in the future, you would say, for either Marillion or any other project that you're involved with?
Well, quite a few of the two long songs that you mentioned, Amelia and 2051, that sort of bookend the album, they're the meaty tracks, the ones that are like 10-15 minutes long. Quite a few of the musical ideas originated in Marillion jams. There were ideas that I had that never got used on Marillion songs, but I really liked. And so there's that sort of, that was the starting point, really. And then I started to get other people involved as it went along, but there's a sort of long story how I got from these sort of initial ideas. It was a friend of mine who said to me, "I'd like to write some lyrics for you. Do you want to try and collaborate on something?" And that was really where it started. So the lyrics sort of came first, really, with these musical sections, I suppose, and then I had to find people to play with me and a singer and so on. So it was a sort of 2-year journey, really.
Mm-hmm. Being that it was a 2-year journey, or what we're gonna, for listeners, are what we're hearing on this album how these songs were originally like written and constructed, or did these songs maybe change a lot over a span of time?
No, I pretty much I tend to work pretty quickly with once I get an idea of where I'm taking something. I don't sort of they developed, but it was more about finding the right people to work with rather than it being the songs that were the problem. Like, for example, I spent about a year looking for a singer. I knew the sort of voice I wanted, and in sort of out of despair, really, I started listening to Spotify, and not that Spotify makes me despair, well, certainly not as a listener anyway, but I started listening to, see if I could find a singer like from some unknown band. There's thousands. I feel sorry for them. There's thousands and thousands of bands, artists on Spotify with a few thousand streams each, or a few hundred streams and 100 followers, that sort of thing. And I just thought, maybe out there I can find a singer. So I started listening and just randomly searching, really. And then one day I came across an artist called Big Blue Ball. Now, you go and look it up, because I'd never heard of them before. And I thought, this singer's great. This is exactly the sort of singer I want. And I thought, well, he sounds a bit like Peter Gabriel. Actually, he sounds a lot like Peter Gabriel. And turns out it was actually Peter Gabriel. It was some project he was involved in like 2007, I think. But there was like a few thousand listeners, and I just thought it was a complete unknown, Anyway, I happened to mention me doing this search in an interview, and a friend of mine read the interview and said, I know just the singer for you. And that was how I found Oliver Smith. And he does have something of a Gabriel-esque quality to his voice, but it wasn't my intention to search for somebody who sounded like Gabriel. But in the search, that's how I found him. So it was good in the end.
Yeah, it seems like, from what I hear about this album, is that like it's almost like the formation of it. It's like the best of both worlds. It was a very, very organic process, but it wasn't also directionless. You had a direction that you wanted to move into, and you had an idea in your mind, but you were kind of like waiting for the perfect time, and then lo and behold, everything just sort of fell into place.
Yeah, and it hadn't occurred to me to ask my nephew to help with the instrumentation, the bass guitar, and some of the guitar parts. But my brother suggested him, and I'm like, yeah, he's like 23 years old, and he does pop music, and but he's used to working on his own. He's used to doing everything, so the whole thing. So I would send him the keyboard part, and he would add the bass, some guitar, and even a drum part, and then send it back to me. So it was a good way of working out the arrangements. So it was like having a one-man band on call that I could just get to, help develop the ideas. But I'd always intended to go in the studio and actually record it like a normal band. But then earlier this year, when the lockdown thing happened and Marillion had to stop working in the studio together, that was when I thought, okay, maybe we can just everybody record their parts at home and send them to me. And that's what we did.
Yeah, it's so weird to think, like, obviously this whole pandemic and everything happening is shitty and on all ends, but, like, I really wonder how many albums, like, would not exist in the future if this whole thing wasn't happening, you know what I mean?
There's so many people, I didn't realize, but I suppose it makes sense when you think about it, that people that, that are used to making music, being creative, who usually don't find the time to just, concentrate on writing and recording at home, and then they're forced into it. And like you said, I think there's a lot of new albums come out this year because of the whole pandemic thing. So something good could come out of it, at least.
I was telling people that when all this is eventually over, we are going to enter, I think, the best era of music in history, period.
Right. Well, I won't hold you to that, but it sounds exciting.
Do hold me to it. If I am wrong, I will make like a whole speech, like admitting that I'm wrong. I'll make a resignation speech for this channel.
Great. Okay. No,
with you as my witness. Now, would you consider this album to be a concept album, or is there a lot of room for it to be open to interpretation?
I think there's a sort of loose concept that links the first and the last track, which is more than half the album, really, because there's like 25 minutes worth of music there. And the loose concept, I suppose, is communication, breakdown in communication, and exploration, and wanting to, push the boundaries, really. Because so you've got, Amelia, the story of Amelia Earhart, and how she tried to fly around the world in 1937 and went missing. Part of the reason why she went missing, she had a navigator, a guy called Fred Noonan, and neither of them could understand Morse code. They had a transmitter on the plane, but cut the cable because it weighed a lot and they wanted to get rid of the weight. Well, that's what people assume. But anyway, they stopped themselves being able to send any messages. They could only receive Morse code and didn't understand it. Now, that sounds like a recipe for disaster to me, and it ended on, that they got lost and couldn't communicate with anybody to find out where they actually were. So that's the sort of, and they were trying to explore, do something that had never been done by a woman before. The 2051, that's about Arthur C. Clarke and Stanley Kubrick and how they got together to try and make the book and the movie of 2001. And their communication broke down and they fell out badly, and there was a lot of distrust between them and all the rest of it. But then the song goes on to explore what might happen in the event of us actually meeting aliens, or if we actually made contact, and how that might not go so well for us. There was Stephen Hawking, the physicist or astrophysicist, famously said that we should stop sending out signals because we might attract unwanted attention. So he was worried that things might not be too good for us. A bit like what happened to the Native Americans when Europeans arrived.
Yeah.
So it's so there is sort of a link between those two songs, but it's not a concept album, to be honest. There's 3 other tracks that have got nothing to do with that subject at all. So, but I wasn't trying to make a concept album.
Okay. Well, because it seems like that, was there maybe a lot of research involved, or maybe literature involved, or stories that you kind of immerse yourself in, or is there maybe also personal representation of your life on this album as well?
I didn't write the lyrics. My friend Guy Vickers wrote the lyrics, and yes, he did do quite a bit of research into both of those subjects. But the other 3 songs, it's not, one of them's a straightforward love song, which is When I Fell, and then the song this time is, it's a 3.5 minute pop rock song in the style of, I don't know, maybe something like, it's certainly influenced by the Beatles or something like that, but lyrically, it's just about separation, really, and about long distance relationship. Something I've got experience of, but I didn't write the lyric. And finally, Puppets is a song about free will. So that's it, really. Yeah.
It seems like you have elements of history on this album, but you also, I think, have subject matters that are very relatable to people. I think musically this is going to lead a lot of people in, but I do see this being an album that are going to relate to many people, especially during the time of isolation and uncertainty. I think that this is really an album that's needed for the times.
Well, I think, I think first and foremost, the music is the most important thing. And, there are, I always say there are great songs that have got average lyrics, but there aren't any great songs with average music,
Yeah.
But I do think the lyrics are, I didn't write them, so I can say this with honesty, that they're, some fairly outstanding stuff there lyrically. He's done a great job. And, taking my music and his lyrics, then it's the job of the singer to come up with vocal melodies and the way of making that work. And I think Ollie's done a fantastic job there as well. So it is, I called the band Marathon because I wanted the band to have an identity separately from me, because I just to recognize that it's a collaboration between 6 people, and they've all contributed. So the idea was to have I think Marathon was, I like running, so that was one connection. And I also, sounds a bit silly, but I wanted a name that worked well with my name, just for the first album, so that, I've got a little bit of name recognition. So to call it Mark Kelly's Marathon, I was thinking like Richie Blackmore's Rainbow, something that sort of worked well together,
Yeah. Can you see yourself making another album like this? Obviously you don't want to repeat yourself or anything like that, but can you honestly consider yourself making another solo album in the future?
I've already started on it. In fact, I'm thinking that I'm going to move away from the shorter 3.5 minute songs and concentrate more on the long. There are 2 quite long songs on this one, but maybe again being nostalgic, I'm thinking a song that takes up the whole side of a vinyl album would be the sort of thing I'd like to do. And we've already got a subject for that, but and he's working on the lyrics now, and I've got some music, but not enough. So there's some work to do. But yeah, I'm quite excited. I'm trying to start the next one before this one's even out. But yeah, it's been really fun making it. So I'd like to try and make another one soon.
Awesome. Is there like anything that maybe tie like creative wise? Is there maybe a similar mind frame between the creative process in Marathon versus like what you would do in Marillion, or is it almost like a completely separate headspace or a different mind frame altogether?
Well, in Marillion, we're actually working on an album at the moment. I was at the studio with the guys today, and we work in a way that's we've built up over the years, and we start off with jams, and those jams then become the building blocks for the songs. And sometimes we will take a jam that we like and then jam around the jam. We will start with the idea already there, and then we see where we can take it next. So it's a sort of slow evolving process between the five of us, and there's maybe hundreds of ideas that will be narrowed down to maybe 20 or 30 things that we all like. And so there's a sort of democracy at work. It's almost like a Venn diagram where the things that fall into the center of the diagram where we all like get worked on, which is a different thing to what I'm doing with Marathon, where, to be honest, it's more like I'm the guy that says this is what we're working on, and nobody disagrees. So it's quite, in that way, it's quite nice to be in charge, if you like, setting the direction. But in Marillion, I think that, good things can come out of that. Not the tension, because we usually just try and find areas that we're all in agreement that it's good. It just takes longer because of that.
Yeah, definitely. And it's like damned if you do, damned if you don't. You want to have a creative say, but you also don't want all the pressure to fall on you at the same time. So I think really with what you do with Marathon and Marillion are like, you kind of have like the best of both worlds in a way.
Well, it's interesting you say that, yeah, because whilst I get the final say, it also means that I get blame. So,
Yep, and you don't want to do that.
Not always, anyway.
Yeah. Now, in order to like get inspired for the creative process, does inspiration sometimes like come out of the blue, or do you almost kind of like need to be in a certain place or be in a certain element in order for like your creative ideas to sort of come to fruition?
For me, I get myself a palette of sounds. So I will literally have different sounds ready on different keyboards, and a bunch of sounds that I really like and that I'm enjoying as a thing. And then I almost just let my mind go blank and see what happens. I'm not really that conscious of what I'm doing playing wise, and luckily it's being recorded, so I don't have to pay too much attention, because then we can listen back. And when we jam, that's pretty much I'm assuming that's what everybody else is doing too. But we're listening to each other as well. For me, it's I don't have to be in a particular frame of mind. I just have to have a keyboard in front of me, I suppose, and a sound that inspires me, even if it's just the piano. A really nice piano sound can be inspiring. In fact, it's one of the most inspiring sounds, really.
Yeah. I consider piano to be like the most important instrument. Like think about like some classical compositions from, Bach or Mozart or Beethoven or Chopin. Like that work is, centuries old, but it's still excellent. You know what I mean? Like, and with how much keyboards have evolved and how much it influenced other genres, I consider like keys and the piano to be like one of the most revolutionary instruments.
Well, it's probably the most versatile in that it's a percussion instrument, because you're hitting the strings. It plays, harmonies, melodies, rhythm. It's got a lot going for it as an instrument, probably more than any other instrument, really.
Yeah. Do you have like the background in theory, like, or do you like know what key you're always working in, and like what notes work with what, or are you on the self-taught side?
I'm definitely on the self-taught side. I didn't even start playing until I was about 15 years old, so I'm not only self-taught, but I was a late starter as well. So I feel like I'm not really up there with some of these guys that are just chop monsters like Jordan Rudess, that can just play amazingly. I think my strengths aren't in virtuoso playing, but more in the the composing and getting a certain atmosphere in the music, really.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel like theory, it's always great to know it, but sometimes you can be like enslaved by it. And, especially if you are just focusing on theory when you first start out, you're going to be bored to tears. I feel like starting off, discovering the instrument on your own and playing what you like, and, it gets you more excited about it to the point where you want to learn more about it.
Yeah, and there's different skills in music, isn't there? Like you say, people that are very good with theory, maybe good at arranging or good with coming up with, parts for other people's music. But then you can have people that can be great players, but aren't very good at composing. Can't come up with anything that sounds good. That's also original. So there's room for lots of different ways of approaching it in music. There's people that have written some of the best songs ever and can hardly play. It's not all about that side of things. Luckily for me, anyway.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's people who know. Try to think of like Ramones, who are one of the best bands in history. Like the Ramones. I mean, when you look at those are very basic chords, but they know how to make them catchy altogether. So sometimes simplicity is the best thing, but then sometimes you have to go above and beyond. I feel like the piano and the keyboard has a good way of being both simplistic, but also being very, very complex.
That's what I love about music is that you listen to music, a piece of music, and you might go, oh wow, that's really interesting. That's great the way that moves. And then you go and sit down at the piano and work it out, and you go, God, is that all it is? And it's just something really simple, and just for something about the way it's been played, or the bass notes against the chords, or whatever it might be, makes it special. And that's something that never fails to surprise me, even after all these years. That you can hear music that you hear for the first time, and it's new and it's fresh. It's great.
Yeah, definitely. Do you find it maybe easier to come up with ideas though when you're in the company of your other bandmates, and you have bandmates either giving you pointers or writing with them, or being that I feel like the piano is the ultimate instrument for isolationists, that maybe you find it easier to come up with new ideas when you're more alone and alone with your thoughts and nothing between you and your instrument?
No, I work better with, certainly to come up with ideas, I work better when there's other people to play off. But it's funny, like today, I had one of those rare times where I was just on the edge of something, playing and thinking, oh, this is something here, and I was almost there, but everybody else was playing, and the moment passed, and I would have liked to have frozen time and just taken a minute to, work out what it was that I was hearing, But that's not usually the case. Normally, when we're, we've been doing this for many years, and there's always something good comes out whenever we play. We might only jam for 30 minutes or an hour, and there'll usually be 3 or 4 really good things will happen in that period. So no, I definitely work better in that sort of environment with the other members of Marillion. The fortunate thing is there'll be quite a few things that I'll come up with in that environment that never get used by Marillion, so that I can go, oh, I'm going to use this in my solo project, which is what I did,
Fair enough. Fair enough. You pocketed the idea. You just kept it in there for later.
Yeah, but if it's been around for 5 years or longer, and some of these ideas have, you sort of get to the point where you think, you know what, this is probably never going to get used, and we do revisit things quite often. Things that we all like, and we go, come on, this is really good, we need to try and do something with it. But it doesn't always get to the point where that happens. It might need something to be sung on it, and there isn't anything, or you might think, oh, this will make a good passage out of a song, but you haven't found the right song for it, So we've got enough stuff going. We've got enough spare ideas that the guys in Marillion aren't going to miss the few that I've used on this album.
Until they hear the album and be like, yo, what the hell, man? You've been holding out on us.
No, because they've got access to all this stuff. No, it's literally the other way around. There's been a few things where, not me, but Steve Rothery, he did a track on his first solo album, the Wishing Tree album, that it was a song called Night Water that he did, and we did a song called The Bell in the Sea, which I'm talking about 1990 now, 1991, something like that. Anyway, it's the same music. It was something that he came up with, a guitar part, and we didn't realise that he'd done it on his solo album. We did this song. Luckily, it was just the B-side, but it's identical. The music is the same thing. It was his idea, but So, and then there was another one that Steve Hogarth did. A vocal line that he used on one of his solo songs. And then it was only after we started working on this particular idea, which was an old idea that he'd sung before he did the solo album. And he went, actually, I've already used that. And we're like, don't worry, we'll use it again.
Fair enough. Hey, it's always good to always, and thank God for phones now where you could just record any idea. I've always said that purgatory for a musician is the realm of forgotten ideas. You're just going to be immersed by every single forgotten riff idea and chord progression and song idea.
Well, we've got multi-track recording going the whole time when we're playing now, so it's, they've got the whole Pro Tools setup going. So it's great, because if you come up with something that really works, you've got a multi-track version of it, so you could actually use it, the actual recording. Because sometimes these things go by, and you try and recreate them, and you just don't quite get it,
Yeah, definitely. It breaks my heart to think like how many forgotten riff ideas or chord progressions or even lyrics are just like that could have been masterpieces were just faded into obscurity.
Yeah, you drive yourself mad with that one.
Yeah. And I have one more question for you, being that you are a fan of longer songs and you really know how to keep the long song engaging, especially for this album. How do you know when a song is done?
I think it's usually the lyric that will dictate that. Well, certainly for me. And, Guy, the lyricist that I've been working with, he's pretty flexible. And if I want to cut bits out or say, this is too long, can we lose some of this lyric? He'll go, okay, I'll rewrite it so that it still makes sense, So he's really good in that way. He's not precious. He's a bit precious, but he's not really precious like some people can be. But I think the song just has to have a shape to it, You want it to take you on a journey, and you have to know when the journey's over, right?
Yeah, and I find it like what it is one thing that has always, for lack of better words, scared me about long songs is that, and I don't even know if this is a goal that you're trying to achieve in songwriting, but you want art to capture a moment in a way. So I'm always worried that maybe the longer you work on something and your feelings change throughout the process of writing the song, that maybe you kind of lose that moment in a way,
I'm the worst in this for that thing where you start off with an idea and you're really excited about it, and the more you work on it, the less excited you are until the end. You're just like, you know what, this is crap, I'm going to start again, and you throw it out. But you shouldn't, because the point you were excited about it, you have to keep that in your mind and think back to how excited you felt about it when you first did it. So that's a hard one sometimes, especially if you're working on an album for months. But hopefully I've learned to not do that. That's why it took me 25 years to make a solo album, because I started a number of times and then just went, nah, start again, and then a few years later I'll have another go, But this time I actually finished it.
Well, are you ever worried that the ideas you threw away in the past are going to be on a B-side one day to just be the biggest hit you've ever had?
I wouldn't complain if they were.
I don't think anybody would. But before we go, I want to thank you so much for your time today. I really enjoyed this discussion. Is there just anything that you would like to promote for the release of the Marathon record in terms of, can we maybe get some live stream performances to hold us over? Or when shows do start happening again, are you going to bring Marathon out on the road as well?
It wasn't my intention to take it on the road, but we got together at Peter Gabriel's Real World Studios in July and actually did a couple of days of filming and recording, and we'd never, some of the guys in the band had never even met each other at that point, and it just really gelled. It was great to be in the room with everybody playing. So now I really want to take it on the road. So as soon as we can, which probably won't be till sometime next year, probably late next year or even 2022, we will definitely do some shows, some gigs. So I don't know where, but yeah, definitely.
Make New York City one of them.
When is this being broadcast?
Probably by the end of the day today. So if it hasn't been announced yet, don't say it here.
No, I was going to say, because we're doing a stream on YouTube on Saturday, which is basically going to stream the whole album and the video that we recorded at Real World. So I just wondered if it's going out before Saturday.
Oh, definitely.
Maybe include that. It's on the if people go to marathonsounds.com and sign up for the newsletter before Saturday afternoon, they will get an email from me telling them with the link so they can tune in and watch it. We're having a little band chat and then playing some of the videos and then a bit more chat and a bit more videos, that sort of thing. So just thought I'd mention that.
Awesome. That's a great way to spend the Saturday afternoon in quarantine, so I'll definitely check it out. But thank you so much, Mark, for your time today. Everybody, Mark Kelly of Marillion, as well as Mark Kelly's Marathon. Be sure to check out the debut marathon record. It's absolutely awesome. This is Alex from Heavy New York, and we will see you next time.